you see the headlines on the status there.
All right, then you can also send us a tweet at smooth981fm. Use the hashtag freshlypressed981. Again, the headline stories or headlines are on our Twitter page, so please go on to Twitter. We're also on YouTube, streaming live right now. So go to youtube.com/smooth981fm Lagos.
And you can watch us live on YouTube and check out on Instagram, rather. Check out on Instagram the headlines. So we've made sure that we'll put up the headlines everywhere so you can join the conversation. Our first story will be taken from the Punch newspaper. Operation Amotekun, presidency, governors meet. The meeting that was meant to be held yesterday was called off because the president apparently was not around, and because it's a sensitive issue. It was more initially that they would have had it with the vice president who was on seat, but that was rescheduled for tomorrow. But what are your thoughts regarding this story, Bolau?
Well, thank you, Valentine. Of course, this Amotekun issue and the case has been going on for quite a few weeks now. When the the Attorney General of the Federation, that's Malami, declared it an illegal entity right after the constitution of the Amotekun. Now, of course, it was said that the Ondo State Governor, which is Governor Akeredolu, who is the one chairing the Southwest Governors Forum, did say that they were going to challenge it in court. But before they challenged it in court, they were going to seek redress and meet with the presidency to address this issue. It is understandable that that is what you would expect them to do, because when you look at it, a lot of their 5 out of the Southwest governors are from the same party as the presidency, which is the APC. Only the governor of Oyo State, who is from the opposition party, PDP. So it's expected that, this matter should be trashed out inter-party, have a discussion about it. And more so, the president has also said initially that he isn't exactly against community policing. And as such, you would expect that they should be able to discuss this amicably and resolve whatever issues that they do have. On one hand, it is discussed that the statement that was made by the Attorney General of the Federation is his own personal opinion and doesn't clearly express the opinions of the federal government. So there's that conversation that is ongoing, and it's not clear yet whether this is the explicit representation of the federal government. So it's ideal for them to meet with the presidency. It's expected that they will meet with the presidency. This article does state that the president, of course, we do know is not available at the moment. He's attending the African UK's business summit that is taking place, as well as 2 of the governors that are meant to be present at this meeting. That is the Lagos State governor and also the Ogun State governor. So that might be the reason why this meeting has now been shifted to Thursday. And on Thursday, there's going to be the National Executive Committee's meeting, where it will be on Thursday. The meeting will be held on Thursday. Yeah, because of the president's absence. And there's going to be a lot of people that all the 36 governors will be present and everyone else will be present. But what I wanted to say is that in my own opinion, I did say initially that I think that the Attorney General of the Federation has made a mistake by declaring this an illegal entity from the onset. I think what could have happened is that they could have actually addressed this personally before making this statement officially that it's illegal. Because by declaring it illegal, I wonder how you can declare what 6 state governors have agreed upon as an illegal entity.
Agreeing upon it doesn't necessarily make it
but these state governors are the chief security officers of the state, and the discussion ongoing.
So that's the moniker. I should say the CSO of the state moniker. It's a moniker that is not known in law. There is nothing. There is no legislation. There is nothing that prescribes that state governors are actually in charge of the security of the state. As a matter of fact, the security of the country is the exclusive preserve of the federal government, and I think that's the standpoint from which the Attorney General came from. The problem, I think, with the entire Motako thing is that the tactics that the state governors actually adopted rendered it a political move, and everyone is looking at it from the political lens.
What
You've had people
tactics?
like Mietiala go on national.
No, but what
television
tactics are we talking about?
and call this a representation
Who is
of the
Mietiala?
backwardness of
Excuse me,
Southwest
who is
politics.
What
Mietiala?
tactics?
No, yeah, but here's the thing. When it comes to the security of any part of the country, I think the insurgency of the past decade has illustrated the vital point that insecurity in one part of the country is a concern for every other part of the country, because the ripple effects could easily cascade to every other part of the country. There are no geographical boundaries, there are no checkpoints between Ogun and here, or Borneo and Lagos, right? And so to say that the security of the Southwest is only a problem of the Southwest, or the exclusive preserve of the Southwest is like
It's not an exclusive. No, it's not an exclusive preserve. But I mean, the whole idea of this is to complement the police system. So
That's right.
I mean, that's the whole idea.
I would
Let's take some
expect the
comments.
Southwest governors to go through their state assemblies so
Yes.
that we can kill this argument once and for all.
All right, just 1 second, please. Vincent Emeka sent a message from Adeba. It clearly expresses a part of my thoughts regarding how quick, they went into when to make this decision. It says formation of Amotekun was hardly done, and we need to know the modus operandi. My fear is that these people will turn into a monster sooner or later. No doubt we have security challenges in the country. It's the speed at which they came to this decision to hurriedly form this group that a lot of people are questioning. The lawful angle will be debated, but it just seems too. It seems ulterior.
Also,
How can you question the speed when people have been dying severally on a daily basis?
You can have a swift response to an emergency, but it also has to be well thought out.
Yeah, and you have to respect the democratic process. We are a democracy in the end. Everything we do right now sets a precedent for future generations, future administrations to come. This is a country where the OPC and all of these other regional militias and organized security organizations.
Don't call them a militia.
We're afraid of our own shadows.
It's not
All
right.
right, let's move on to the next one.
We need to move on very quickly to this next one, and this story is from the Daily Times. Now, federal government develops national framework to address climate change issues. I found it interesting that the statement was made by the aviation minister addressing, or actually mentioning some systems that they've put in place. But what are your thoughts on this, Devo? Interesting. Okay, so we'll move on to discuss this next story. Ikeme said, I'll come to you for your analysis on the story from the Guardian newspaper. NIMET projects earlier than normal onset of rainfall nationwide. Still about weather. Your thoughts?
Indeed. So the Nigerian Meteorological Agency basically came out to issue its 2020 seasonal rainfall predictions, essentially stating basically this lays the marker from when the rainy season will start and where it will end. And it's particularly interesting that they think that in most parts of the country by February we should be able to see some form of rainfall, and that would last till December here in the south, or till September in parts of the north. NIMET also, why this is particularly important is because our agricultural production is particularly rain-fed, and so everybody watches this. And I was looking up the data, and research from both the University of Ibadan and the Obafemi Awolowo University have set down the marker that the length of the farming season is closely correlated to the length of the rainy season. Right? And so this is very important. NIMET also said that they are watching wider climatic conditions in other parts of the world, and so this is predicted to be an El Nino neutral year, which means that in theory, freak weather events would be at a minimum, and that should also affect general overall rainfall in this part of the world. The one larger point I want to make about this before we get out of this story is that rain-fed agricultural systems are particularly susceptible to climate change, and since that has been the conversation that's become very relevant in the past, in the last few years, you see the floods going on in East Africa, you see the bushfires that are going on in Australia. It's particularly important. It's particularly important that right now in Nigeria we begin to have conversations about how to decouple our agricultural systems away from overall weather patterns. How we can look at building up our irrigation infrastructure, for example, in order to ensure that we're able to secure food security. When you look at policies like the land border closure that are ostensibly done in order to protect things like Nigerian agriculture, but the government is saying very little about how to, grow and build out our overall irrigation infrastructure in order to empower our farmers to do what they do. And also considering that about 64% of Nigerians are employed directly or indirectly through agriculture, it says a lot about where the policy stance or the policy thinking of our policymakers.
Thank you very much.
I like the examples you made, chemistry, because yesterday it was scary to see after the bushfires. We saw that there was hailstones in Australia, falling in Australia as large as golf balls.
Yeah.
Even same yesterday in South Africa, the wind gusts up to 103 kilometers per hour. A lot of people were scared to come out. People were closing shops.
Indeed.
So it's a reality that's that.
It is. And scientists say that these will become more common, they will become more frequent, and they will become more significant, they will become more powerful.
Thank you. Just also point out with regards to the analysis on the rainfall or the reports on this rainfall, we also are told to take note of these periods to ensure there's adequate arrangements to prevent the outbreak of diseases that are probable in such areas. I think this is also something that we must also start to plan for.
Yeah.
Usually we are reactionary, and when we have the reason for data and information like this is for us to make adequate plans. So I hope that health practitioners will and public health officials will take note.
Thank you very much, Kamesi. Thank you, Ayo. Let's get back to the story from the Daily Times, people. I'm sure you're ready. Now, there's the National Framework for the Application of Climate Services that was instituted to address climate change issues, and it was announced by the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, in this story. But your thoughts on this? It says it's a downscaled version of the World Meteorological Organization.
Well, basically, this is infrastructure to support climate variability change, weather climate issues that we've had for some time, that most people have, to be able to guide. Now, especially affecting the aviation sector, because planes fly in the air, and most times they fly blind. So they rely on the intelligence and the information coming from these infrastructures to be able to guide them to ensure that both local and international flights do not have issues. Two, what he did mention also was that police stormed venue of the that's a mix-up in the article. But basically, what they're looking at is a collaboration between federal, states, and LGAs to develop the infrastructure necessary for doing this. It doesn't detail out actually what those infrastructures are, but my only issue is that even NIMET in its current state has been giving out weather reports for some time now. Just look at the flooding matter, and it's never obeyed. It's like these declarations from them just fall on deaf ears.
Not necessarily.
Well,
I mean, they give these reports every day. They give daily forecasts, and most of the time it informs states, certain decisions that they will make in line with maybe agriculture, in terms of
yes, but where it affects us, like you mentioned, agriculture, in terms of have we done anything to ensure that some states, look at the deforestation. For a long time, we've not heard so much about that, but it's taking place. Look at the issue of flooding. That's a perennial problem practically throughout the Southwest. Nothing in terms of road building or caveats to build drainages. Take Lagos, for example.
It's happening.
Lagos has not done anything to address.
I'll tell you for
have
free.
They?
I'll tell you for free. So if you go to the Instagram page of the governor, so you find daily schedules for road construction and reconstruction.
No, I'm not talking about road construction. I'm talking about how you partition the land, create proper drainages, how you stop development in some areas to ensure that this below sea level instance that we have in Lagos is addressed, so that it happens like twice a year, houses don't get submerged in water. I don't see anything like that happening. So I hope that what the minister is planning will have some concrete connection at the end of the day.
Thank you, Devo.
All right, thank you very much. Gwengu says, we all made noise about floating a regional security outfit because of the sensationalism of the so-called Fulani herdsmen. Ethnic jingoists blackmailed the president and the governors to forming the Amotekun. The president wasn't part of the formation of Amotekun. Let's move on to Oladotun's comments. The Amotekun outfit is illegal. At law, there is no empowering legislation for the creation. More so, matters get worse because it is not a state police outfit empowered by state legislation. Yes, Amotekun is desirable, but not legal.
Again, it's not meant to replace the police, but to complement it according to what they said, their efforts.
Michael from Ogudu, interesting comment here, says every family already takes care of their security. Likewise, every house, every street. It became necessary when the federal government ignored the security of lives and property and our emergency response system is we.
All right, let's move on to this next story. Amnesty International is swiftly reacting to the killing of the Christian Association of Nigeria, the chairman. He was killed. That's the chairman in Michika local government area of Adamawa State. This happened on Monday. Very sad and scary situation. But your thoughts on this, Bolahas? It raises a major security concern.
Well, I mean, first of all, I'd like to say my condolences to the families of the bereaved, and also to Nigerians as a whole too, because generally what we are seeing in this kind of cases is that we're looking at it from a religious point of view and saying that, oh, it's the Christians that should be bereaved because a Christian, a national chairman of a Christian society was
Christian
killed,
Association.
or Christian association was killed. But unfortunately, this has a ripple effect to Nigerians. We're not talking about a man who's a Christian, we're talking about a Nigerian.
Yes.
And we're talking about someone who's lost his life through this insecurity that we've seen that has occurred for several years now in our country. He was killed in the hands of Boko Haram. And this is Boko Haram that we have said several times has been defeated.
Technically defeated.
Well, you know, whether you use technically
Or degraded,
or
that's the
degraded.
nature.
And then we find out that situations of this is happening. Of course, the message that Boko Haram is sending to Nigerians as a whole is information, is terror. And it's stating to us that we are not safe in our country. Because to me, the way I see this is if a Nigerian has lost his life, then we are all at risk. This can happen. It could have happened to anybody. It could have happened to anyone. He was abducted in Adamawa. Anybody could have been at that point in time being adopted by Boko Haram. So it's rather unfortunate to see this incident happen. And the Amnesty International has condemned this act, and they have also said that the government needs to do a lot more and be a lot more proactive in ensuring that all of these insecurity issues that we're facing is nipped in the bud. I remember yesterday that we were talking that we have to be very careful about the interpretations that we make out of a lot of all the international observers. I mean, sometimes these international observers are fair in their dealings. When they look at things, they see beyond what we are seeing. They also see beyond sometimes what the federal government is actually pushing out to us.
Well,
Sometimes
They're not burdened by those political.
they're not burdened.
considerations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But also it worries me because just recently it seemed like they reduced the level of security presence that the military has been given to the north or those affected areas. So this, like you said, Bola used a statement that I really like. It's like sending a message to let you know that, oh, however you feel like you technically defeated us, we're still here. So
I think very quickly I should just jump in and say the security strategy as it has evolved over the past year has been for the main towns and the main urban areas to have a very significant military presence. But there are a lot of open and rarely police spaces out there, and Michika is a very rural part of Adamawa State, which is itself a very rural state, right, compared to the rest of the country. And so there's the opportunity for these attacks to come up, and that's where the Amnesty International's injunction becomes very relevant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kemese. Since you have the mic, I'll stay with you for the next one. Rights of way. Federal government warns states over price increment. Vanguard newspaper reports. Now, the rights of way is the permission given to the operators by either the federal, state, or local government councils to open the roads and lay fiber cables that carry internet traffic. And recently, it was announced that there's going to be an increment of up to 1,200%. And now the federal government is wading in. Please take us through this story.
So that announcement was made by some states, right? So this is part of that overall revenue increase generation strategy that some state governments, which have become effectively cash strapped and are uncomfortably reliant on their federal allocations, are trying to institute. The problem, right, from the federal government standpoint, is that the efforts by some of these state governments to increase these right of way charges goes against the 2013 agreement, which the federal government and all of the states came together and collectively agreed on. And so the price that was agreed on was for a right of way charge of 145 naira per linear meter of fiber, right? But you have a situation where there are certain states, I think Kogi was one of the latest ones to
Yeah.
announce
Mhm.
that go as far as 6,000 naira, and telecom operators are saying this is a burden, this is a fixed cost. All of them are continually upgrading and
Yeah.
expanding their infrastructure. There are many operators. I think the biggest operator in the country will be the only exception that covers probably 86% of Nigeria,
Yeah.
right? And so there's a continuous effort at building out this infrastructure, and they say these charges would make it prohibitively expensive for them to do
Yes.
that. If they have to abide by these charges, they will have to pass those costs to the customer. But Nigeria's interesting federal structure also comes into play here, because in many parts of the country, people get charged the same thing for the same service, right? So, data costs the same in the north as it costs, down south here, which might not take into account the economic reality of the situation on the ground. It might actually be
Absolutely.
cheaper to lay fiber in this part of the country than it is to lay fiber in another part of the country. So you might have a situation where operators might start to decouple some of these costs, and it becomes more expensive for already poor parts of the country
Yes.
to have access, right, to the internet. And this has
And it goes against our digital inclusive.
of course, it goes against our digital inclusion strategy. It goes against our plan to deepen broadband penetration to 80%. Nigeria is already one of the countries with the lowest last mile broadband deployments in the world. So it's one thing to pipe the internet to the country.
Yes.
It's another thing to take it to the end consumer. And you have a situation where a lot of the poor services that a lot of Nigerians face, right, is due to the thin network of broadband.
The backbone growth. And I would add that the federal government
this doesn't help.
Needs to discuss with the states and have an agreement. This infrastructure is actually
But
not
there's
meant
already
to.
an agreement.
No, what I'm saying, not with the states. The states actually believe that within their own land, they should be able to heap those charges. And it's national infrastructure for everybody. Or the other way around is that the federal government should begin to share from what they earn with the state. So at the end of the day, you don't pass on new costs.
So right of way charges are charged by the state. The federal government just steps in as a mediator to ensure that the prices are fair. So these are already charges that go to the state. That's why the states are looking to increase the quantum of revenue that they get from that stream.
Thank you very much.
The telcos have already been overburdened by duplicity of taxes.
And they are burdening us as well.
The telcos are the consumers.
Because of this burden.
Of course.
Please.
It has to burden us.
Trevor Noah's Lapa opinion on WhatsApp says climate change can potentially cause a food crisis in Nigeria. It has been partially blamed for the deadly drought in Zimbabwe. Thank you very much. Yinka says, does the federal government have a moral stand? Okay, we'll take that later.
And Austin from Satellite Sound says, good morning, killing of can president, religious. All right, so Austin, we need to be very careful about the things we say, particularly at this point in time in our nation, please. It's really important.
Our next story, Devo, let's quickly touch on this. The EFCC is out to scandalize me with forfeiture of my property. Saraki, the former Senate president, he's saying that the EFCC is, first of all, trying to scandalize him with the publication and the court processes, saying that there was a pending case that they had filed in Abuja, and this was subverting that. I mean, do you think it's a personal vendetta against him?
Well, because it's a former political leader, many people have their views as to the veracity of the claims. However, he did get an injunction from the Supreme Court that was on July 6, 2018, asking the parties to stay in their proceedings. However, the EFCC did initiate the process of forfeiture of his assets, given the fact that they said that along the way that there was another ex parte motion that alleged that the properties were acquired with proceeds of unlawful activities perpetrated when Saraki was in government. That's in Kwara State government between 2003 and 2011. And I think many of us still remember that case whereby around 2003, 2011, they said that there was a common pattern after payment of monthly allocation by the federal government to Kwara State. A cumulative sum of about 100 million would be deposited in the Kwara State government house accounts, of which Afiz Yusuf, who was then the I think SSG or something like that, would be withdrawing the amounts in small portions and passing them on to the alleged. So I think in terms of these corruption cases, we need to find a way to accelerate it one way or the other. I think EFCC has an initial go-ahead to forfeit, but they need to finalize this, which is usually where the long process of injunctions and of adjourning the motions keep coming. Hopefully, if they can get to the end of this matter, so that instead of it being a media trial, it's finalized with a conviction and a verdict, and we'll know who is actually
Who's
the
saying-
corrupt one.
All right. Thank you very much, Divo.
Okwemi Praise on WhatsApp says, for a fact, a lot of those states are actually not profitable for telecom services. Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt are the states bearing the cost. The state government are doing or are undoing themselves. Thank you very much. And then Adenike says, if lives are lost and some governors deem fit to lend their weight to form an outfit to help in ensuring security and do some, and someone is saying it is illegal, why not find a way to legalize it? If they want it prescribed, then they are suspect in the cause of insecurities happening. They may be profiteering from the insecurity. I move on to our next story here. Fight against graft in 2020 will be massive, and this is according to the SEC boss, Magu. Please take us to the story.
Well, this is according to the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes
Acting
Commission.
chairman.
The acting chairman. Sorry,
Acting for a
I
long
stand.
time, but
I
acting.
stand corrected. Okay, yeah, that is Mr. Ibrahim Magu, and he made this statement while he was visiting the zonal office in Lorin. And according to him, his statement was that the anti-graft czar is assuring everybody that no high-profile individual will be exempted from being prosecuted. As long as the investigations are carried out and they have been found wanting, they will be prosecuted. Of course, we all are in support of the fight against corruption. Of course, we all know the implications of
Are we
corruption.
all in support?
I was
Well,
going to,
okay, well, at least majority of the
That's
citizens
in principle,
should be in support. I mean, loving Nigerians should be in support of the fight against corruption. But what we are against is when it seems like a witch hunt, when it seems like it's lopsided and it doesn't seem to be fair. So what we're expecting and what we're pleading with the EFCC acting chairman is that, of course, we have to ensure that due process is followed. We also have to ensure that whoever is found wanting is prosecuted. I mean, we will cite examples of people like the Kano State Governor, Ganduje, who was caught with video evidence receiving monetary rewards, and then there's been nothing so far.
Yeah, well, his election has been upheld by the Supreme Court. So
Well, I mean, with all of that, and his election has been upheld by the Supreme Court. So I mean, we expect to see a lot more prosecutions, just as he said, and perhaps maybe a massive prosecution, and perhaps maybe this might be the year that Desani will be repatriated or will be brought back into Nigeria. I don't have an issue with that, but I mean, we're talking about
Just
fighting
an
corruption,
example, yeah.
and I'm just citing an example
well,
here.
The body language of the UK doesn't seem to suggest so, and I know that I read an article this morning talking about the fact that the UK is unwilling to repatriate
Well, you know, our president has just been to the UK and he's had talks also with it. No, he did also have talks with the prime minister as well. And one of the conversations that they did have is the extradition of wanted persons back to Nigeria. Might I also add as well to that, while we're talking about the extradition of people, we should also be talking about the repatriation of the looted funds too, because I mean, the case of the former Delta State governor does come into mind, Ibori, and I heard of recent as well to that the UK government is still talking about more of his assets, and so we hope that we're going to see a lot more repatriation of those assets to Nigeria.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. On Twitter, Made Fred says, formation of Amotekun is a result that the federal government can no longer protect Nigeria's citizens. For me, it's a step that should be copied by other regions. One of the solutions to Nigeria's problem will be going back to regional government. Nigerians have lost confidence.
We're still a federal system, right?
Yeah, in theory.
Yeah. All right. Let's continue this conversation on social media. Tweet at us at Smooth981FM. Use that hashtag freshlypressed981.
Also to note that a tanker broke down and is blocking the road at BGC, hence the horrendous traffic on that axis, and also according to Wolaon on these other axes is a bit freer. But just for those who are from Ajah and beyond, to take note of the fact that the reason why there's such heavy traffic is that a tanker has blocked the road at BGC, and we're calling calling on appropriate authorities to please help to clear the road so that commuters can get to their various destinations on time.
Absolutely. And special thanks to you, Wolaho. Thank you for stepping in. Mr. G Quest and Devo Korea, thank you. And Ikeme says at Judge.
Judge, where did you go?
He's making money. He's making money.
Mostly North
Asking.
America.
North America,
Yeah.
Canada.
Oh, really?
Yeah,